Welcome to the show. You're listening to Perfect Health on Elastic FM with me, Elaine Godley, and I'm delighted to welcome my guest today, Martin Graham Gamble. So, welcome, Martin, to the show.
Hello, thank
So,
you for having me.
I know you as Martin Graham, but you're Martin Gamble. So, explain yourself, please.
Yes, well, my full name's actually Martin Graham Gamble, but I have a show like yourselves on Elastic FM, and that goes under the name Martin Graham. So it's just really to differentiate between the two. So for social media, I know I can be sort of split into two personalities, if you like, for that. So I get the sort of personal stuff to myself, and then I get the work stuff, if you like, through the Elastic FM ID,
Right.
which is Martin Graham. But I'm one and the same, yeah.
One of the same, cool.
Yeah.
And you speak with a delightful accent, Martin. Where are you from?
Yeah, well, I'm born and bred in Sheffield, really. So what we call DDARs, because there's no TH sound in Sheffield. It's always NAD-ND, what DDAR, da, DDAR, what. So we're called DDARs, but I'm actually a dual citizen as well. So I've also got an Irish passport as well as a UK one. So I have fond affinities to the Emerald Isle.
Right. What's the connection to Ireland?
Well, it's through heritage, through grandparents, but I in a previous job I used to work a lot out of Ireland, so I love the place. It's great, Belfast, Dublin, Cork, all over the place, Kerry. So yeah, I just like the place, and I've got a strong affinity, strong draw to my ancestral home.
Right, lovely. I'm rather partial to Guinness. I went to Dublin last year and visited the Guinness factory, and I have to say it's just pure genius over there. It really is.
It is a different drink over there, I must admit. Yeah, yeah. There's also the Jameson's distillery there as well, which is quite interesting if, like myself, you got invited onto a tasting session. So
Oh, that sounds dangerous.
Yeah, well, immediately threw the car keys to my wife and said, "That's it, I'm joining in on this one," and I did. And I quite enjoyed that afternoon. That was quite fun.
Fabulous. So we're not here to talk about alcohol and testing whiskies and Guinness, although however nice that is. So Martin, you've had quite an interesting background in your sporting career. So you've actually mentioned in Ireland, you've actually cycled for Ireland, haven't you? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's probably made my last appearance. Well, my last appearance was about 2005, so it's a dim and distant memory at the moment. But I'm a cyclist, and the discipline I rode in is something called cycle speedway, which is sort of it's short track racing, but contact sport as well. So it can get a bit scary. Under British Cycling, I've also qualified as a coach. So the coaching badges have enabled me to act as tour director and write development plans, coaching sessions, and things like that through all disciplines. So I don't just do speedway now. I'm actually coaching a regular slot in Sheffield at Forge Valley for road racing. So. But I also, I love track, I love time trialing, anything to do with a bike really, if I can get back on a bike, because unfortunately injuries over the years are now coming back to bite me, so it's very difficult now to to see myself getting back on a bike in any imminent time.
So road racing, you mentioned, there's an awful lot of road racing going on these days. So quite often you'll find whole villages are closed and diversion signs and all sorts going off, particularly in the East Midlands where I've just moved from. So the road racing, what's the big deal? What's the difference between speedway and road racing?
Well, first of all, apologies if you're a motorist. I'm also a motorist as well as a cyclist, so I get equally frustrated when roads are closed and you want to get from A to B. You can see where B is, but you have to go via C, D, E, F, and G to get there because there's a blasted cycling race on. But yeah, I mean, road racing tends to be the professional cycling sport. So these are the guys that at the top level, they can make handsome living. At the top level, at the elite level. but the beauty of cycling is that of course it appeals. You only need one person to enjoy cycling. It's not like football. You can't really go and play a game of football on your own, or rugby or hockey or anything like that, or netball. But cycling, if there's one of you or 100 of you or 1,000 of you, you can participate in various things, and they're not necessarily all sporting, not necessarily all competitive. You get the sportives, and you get the fun run, the fun rides, if you like, the breeze ride, which is aimed at getting more women into cycling as well. It's open season. Whatever you want to do, if you want to do it on a bike, there's something to do somewhere, and some facility. And there'll be a discipline that if you don't like one discipline, if you don't like time trialing, you don't like roads, you can go to track racing, or you can go to BMX or mountain biking. So there's something for everybody there as far as cycling is concerned. It's a good and fit and healthy pastime as well. It gets the old lungs going, keeps the muscles toned. It's not as load bearing as such. It's not like weightlifting or anything like that.
Yes.
Cycling is often compared to swimming as a good therapeutic pastime as well.
Yeah, I have a confession to make, Martin. I can't ride a bike. I didn't have a bike as a child, and I've tried many times since I've grown up. Well, actually, that's debatable. My family say that I'm still working on growing up, but I didn't have a bike, and a few times I've actually been out and bought a bike with a view to trying again and doing charity things, but I just can't get the hang of it. My balance is just atrocious, and I'm scared to go fast on it, so I'm a bit of a wimp. And many times I've bought bikes and I've given them away to charities. So I'm not a very good advocate, I'm afraid.
Yeah, well, balance is something we'll probably touch on a bit later on in this program, about how to improve balance and various other things. But again, it's worth the effort. As people say, it's like riding a bike. It's the sort of thing you never forget what you do once you've learned, once you've done it, and there's so much pleasure in it. And it serves a valuable purpose as well, because and I think we're in times at the moment where people are being encouraged to work from home, and that does two things. One is it frees up the roadways, if you like. I was in rush hour traffic in Sheffield last night, and it was like a bank holiday Sunday morning. It was dead as a dodo, and I think the paradigm is going to change as well, the paradigm for transport. So we'll be looking at situations where, be it electric cars or be it short journeys made on bicycles and things like that, would be more appropriate as we move along. And of course, if there's less traffic on the roads, the motorists are happy because they're not stuck in traffic jams. The cyclists are happy because there's fewer cars on the road to run into, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
A lot of people are put off by traffic on the roads, and I must admit it frightens me at times. But on the other hand, it's something. The roads are big enough for everybody. So this situation we're in at the moment with lockdown and people staying home to work rather than travelling to and from offices, the whole paradigm of the rush hour and traffic and traffic jams and all the other good stuff that goes with that. May well change as we come out the other side in a few weeks or months' time.
I think you're absolutely right there. I think there is a huge paradigm shift at the moment. Before I left Nottingham, I was seeing an awful lot of cyclists coming out and about as the weather was improving on the cycle pathways, and the UK have done a very good job in joining up the cycle pathways, particularly with the universities, so that students can go from one campus to another on their bicycles, which makes perfect sense, doesn't it? I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, it is I mean, I mentioned I'm coming from Sheffield. I lived in Sheffield for the first 30 odd years of my life, and Sheffield is renowned. It's like Rome, apparently. It's built on 5 rivers and 7 hills. Apart from that, we haven't got a Colosseum or a Forum or anything like that. But the hills in Sheffield make it sometimes quite difficult to ride a bike, although competitively there's been quite a good representation of Sheffield and South Yorkshire riders riding at elite level. until quite recently. So the practicalities of riding a bike, say from the city centre to the outskirts at Norton or somewhere like that, it's great going in because it's all downhill, but downhill only works one way. So you've then got to use the energy coming home, pedalling up up Meadowhead and Chesterfield Road, which are quite steep. But some people like the challenge of doing that, and when people gain more confidence riding on the road, it is a very helpful way, and it saves a lot of money in petrol and bus fares and various other things. So, and you can get tax breaks as well if you buy a bike for work. So there's lots of things in favour of bikes. I think we can still do a lot more to encourage more cycling on the roads. But hopefully this situation at the moment will help matters a little bit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know you could get a tax break from bikes. It makes sense if you can get tax breaks with your cars. Why not with bikes? That makes sense, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I'm assuming it's still if you're using the bike to commute to and from work or on business, then you can get a tax break on that. Yeah.
Excellent. What are the main health benefits for bike riding, would you say?
Well, just a general overall fitness. You are exercising most of your muscles. Having said that, things like your anything around the waist, you always, the proper cyclist, you see a proper cyclist always have a slight punch, which is
yes.
because you don't use stomach muscles. But again, depending on what discipline you go in, you can build up muscle mass quite easily. I mean, typically sprint cyclists, I'd have a fat body weight ratio of around about probably 10% or even less than that, and that's probably a 25, 30-year-old male who'd normally be about 25% fat body weight at that level. So you do end up being sort of muscle bound in some ways, especially if you're a sprinter. But you see, I mean, I don't know if you noticed Bradley Wiggins. So Bradley Wiggins is one of the, well, it's either him or Chris Hoy who've got the most medals in Olympics. And one of them's built like a drain pipe, and the other one's built like a brick toilet. So it doesn't, it tones your muscles for a start, but your fitness and your oxygen intake and things like that can go up as well. And I mentioned hills as well in Sheffield. They're quite useful for doing quick sprints and get out the saddle and attacking the hills, going up the hills, and getting the heart rate up, getting the oxygen working, and trying to stay aerobic. Obviously, if you're sprinting, you're anaerobic, which means you're working out of oxygen. So you different things happen to your body when you're working in oxygen and out of oxygen. So there's, again, if you just want to be fit enough just to go for a country ride, say Sherwood Pines or Sherwood Forest or anywhere like that, Rother Valley, you can be fit enough to do that, quite comfortable, and enjoy cycling. So really, it's a sport for everybody, really. Like I said, I compare it to other sports like rugby league, netball, and football, and everything else that goes with it. There's an aspect to it where you require a minimum level of fitness, whereas cycling you don't. You can get on a bike tomorrow and ride. Just ride round the block and then build up your fitness as you go along.
I've got visions of me over the next few years of cracking this, because I do want to, because I see that the health benefits and the fresh air and all the rest of it. And now I'm living in Portugal, it would be lovely to sort of toodle along the promenade with a bike. But I've got visions of me with one of these 3-wheelers with a basket on the front, driving Miss Daisy type of bike. But it's a bike, it's got wheels.
Don't knock it. That's just as good. That's fine. You see a lot of people on 3 wheels. There are races for trikes, so it is recognised. You can get a fair old speed up on a trike, gets you from A to B, and practically speaking as well, if you're carrying shopping, a trike is probably as good a vehicle as anything, really, because you can put a basket on the back and you're not going to be worried about shopping falling out or toppling over or anything like that. You can just get on the bike and ride the bike. So why not? But it's definitely worth the perseverance, I think. Really, you probably need a coach out there in Portugal, Elaine, just to help you along a little bit there. But it shouldn't take you too long to get going on a bike.
You need to come and visit. You need to come and visit and coach me, Martin.
That's very kind of you. I shall ride there, because I don't even get a flight or a train or anything like that. I shall have to get the bike out and ride down.
Okay. You mentioned you were a tour director. So what does that involve?
Well, tour director just basically, they're called chef de mission. The universal language of cycling is French, so I apologise if I drop into the odd bit. But chef de mission, the mission chief, if you like. So that was basically organising the tour, getting the hotels sorted out, getting any training facilities, getting the matches sorted out, the competitions sorted out, and basically acting as a conduit for. At the time, I think it was an under-16 team that we took out there to United States. And we centred on Arizona, which is a wonderful part of the world, the Grand Canyon and all around there, the Bell Rock, Sedona, Jerome, the ghost town, the cowboy town, and Monument Valley, all within sort of driving distance of where we were. So I was more impressed with the scenery than the actual competition, to be honest. But basically, it's just looking after the health and welfare of about 15 or 16 kids and a few other members of the tour party. So you're the backside that gets kicked if it goes wrong. But that's basically what the tour director does. It's quite a prestigious job, but it's not the sort of thing that if you want to retire early that you need to be doing now. I'm glad I did it when I did, when I got the energy and the direction to do it. But it's certainly a fulfilling job as well.
You've on your CV, you have a number of caps, as it were. So if you were a footballer, you'd be capped. So tell us about the competitions that you've won and things you've done on that side of things.
Okay, well, I represent. I had one cap for England, one appearance for England, but then at Cycle Speedway. But then some of the guys got together, realised that we'd got Irish heritage over here, so we actually created a team. So we it wasn't started in Ireland; it was started in the UK. And as it went on, it was there's the Home International Series, which was run each year. So it was England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. So it's a bit like rugby in that there's no differentiation between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, which is Ireland is Ireland, and that's it. So we've got guys from the north and guys from the south in the side. And that was really just to get going in the home international competition. But as things went on, then the European and the world stage beckoned. I was very privileged and proud to ride in a couple of world finals and a couple of world individual finals as well, back in 1991. So it was all part of the emerging international scene at the time. But that immediately ups the ante. You've got to cover every blade of grass, so to speak. You've got to cover every problem, every issue you've got to sort out as a sports person. So the only difference between what I do and what, say, Chris Hoy would do or Bradley Wiggins would do is that they get paid for it and I don't. But that's deliberate, because at the time I got quite a good job. I've got a good job now. And I wanted the hustle and bustle of international competition. But if I lost my job, I'd also lose my hobby. So I'm very sort of as I mentioned at the outset of the conversation about being Martin Graham or Martin Gamble. I like being the cyclist and the not cyclist. And the not cyclist, or the guy who works in IT versus the guy who rides a bike, and I'm able to split between the two. So, like I say, if I lose my job, I don't lose my hobby. So if I'd have gone professional cyclist, if I lost my job, I've also lost my hobby as well, because that's what I like doing.
Mm.
So it was quite a good arrangement really, and there are lots. I'm sure there are far more people who ride at elite levels or compete at elite levels in sport or anything else for that matter. It could be dance, it could be arts, anything. Who are very good at what they do, but they choose not to make a living at it as such, because of that reason. And that's why I was very happy to do that at the time.
Okay, so you became a coach, which is fantastic, and as we know, coaching, once you know how to coach, you can apply it in lots of different areas of life, can't you? So what areas have you covered? Because you mentioned not just cycling. So how have you used your coaching experience and qualifications in other areas?
Well, the coaching, there's a lot to coaching. There's sort of there's a man management side of it, woman management side of it as well. Let's not forget. You've also got the technical side as well, and sometimes you'll have a section of coaches working with one or more athletes. So you'll have somebody who'll be looking at nutrition, you'll have somebody who'll be looking at fitness, you'll be somebody looking at recovery, somebody looking at stamina, and different coaches sometimes specialise in different specialities. And I've taken the level 2 club coach badge way back in 2000, which enabled me to coach across disciplines within British cycling, and as such also delivered coach-to-coach sessions as well at the English Institute of Sport and various other venues, where there's an exchange of ideas, and as a coach you learn things on a daily basis. If you don't, you're not coaching properly really. But again, like I said, there are lots of things, lots of coaches who specialise in, some will specialise on rollers, for instance, in cycling, some will specialise on roller racing, some will specialise on the watt bikes, which are these things that you see advertised with Peloton. I think other static bikes may also be available. But you've seen the adverts for that, and these are basically watt bikes. So these are bikes that were used in the science lab to actually calculate how much energy cyclists are producing, how much energy, and compare that against how much energy a cyclist needs to actually compete at the level that they want to. And the other thing about coaching is that it can apply to everybody or anybody. You're not necessarily preaching to the converted. You can work. I work a lot with grassroots, and it's great seeing kids grow up, from toddling about to getting on a bike with the old bikeability bikes, the ones that don't have pedals, so they're just learning balance at the time, and then they graduate onto pedals, and then they get onto road, and then they get onto track, and so on and so forth. So I'll not mention them, but there are a number of cyclists who are emerging at the moment at the elite level, and representing the country at sort of under 23 level at the moment. That I was very pleased to have coached. I'm not claiming any benefit for it because they've moved on to other coaches since I worked with them. But they are. It's very pleasing to see that, and I get as much out of that as I did competing myself. To be fair, I think it's a different career. And a different set of skills actually being a coach as well, because you talk about things, you have to understand things rather than just going out and doing it, which is basically what the athlete does. The athlete basically does what they're told or what they agree to, and that's another skill altogether, being a coach. Yeah.
I know you talk about in things I've read about, you talk about circle of performance. Tell us about that. What is a circle of performance?
Well, this is. I did a diploma in sports psychology at the same time as I did a coaching badge as well. So I was quite busy for at least a year, and something like 800 hours worth of work that went into it. It's quite intensive. And what you try and do is you create an environment, and this is the view that we put together. You often see people say, when we start winning things, then we'll start enjoying sports a bit more, or enjoying the career a bit more once we start getting results. And people start putting carts before horses, with this thing. Confidence, for instance. So people, the adage about confidence in football, I'll use football to know football quite well. If we start winning games again, we will gain our confidence, is a normal mantra that you hear across the terraces or on the TV sets at the weekend. And clearly there, the obvious question there is, well, if you haven't got the confidence, how are you going to win that first game anyway? So the thing that you need to address is the confidence, not the actual winning of the game. So you're dealing with the confidence of the athletes first to make sure that when those athletes cross that white line and start competing, that they are confident. And basically confidence is essentially, it's a trust in your own ability, really. So you have to work with the athletes so that they trust their own abilities. And then they can do that on a Saturday afternoon or whenever it is that they're actually competing, and compete to the best of their ability. So the circle of performance is based around that. Now, if I start off, I'll be paradoxically, paradox is something that seems to be untrue, but it isn't. It's true. Paradoxically, the first thing that you need to do on the circle of performance is you need to create an environment where people enjoy what they're doing. Now, this applies not just to sport, but I'm sure it applies to careers and anything else that you're doing. Looking after children, whatever you want to, however you want to do it, you can apply this to any walk of life. So if you find an angle to enjoy your work, and you enjoy it, you create an environment where other people can enjoy it. So I, as a coach, the first thing I do is create an environment where people enjoy it. Starting off with a nice friendly smile, a bit of fun, make sure that the training, the practice that you're doing is fun and people enjoy it. Some kids are so talented you can't teach them anything, but you can create an environment that they enjoy working in. So if you've got that enjoyment at the outset and people enjoy it, what happens? Well, they come back for more. They then say, okay, coach, when's the next session? Well, it's next week. Oh, can we have a session on Thursday or Friday? And eventually you end up building that demand. If you come back for more, you train and you practice better. And that will include conditioning. If you're talking about sports, if you're talking about career, that might mean that the work that you're putting in is a little bit more intense, a little bit more relevant to what you're doing, and a little bit more directed to what you're doing. And if you've done that, then your preparation's better. Now, if your preparation's better, back to what I was saying about confidence earlier, confidence being a trust in your own ability, you can trust your own ability there, so that gives you the confidence. So confidence actually comes quite a way down before you actually get involved in looking at results. And even after confidence, the next step after confidence, if you're prepared, you're confident, you've done all your training, you've practiced everything, you can analyse, you can say, okay, as I cross this line today to compete as an athlete, have I done everything I needed to do to get to this stage? Have I trained hard? Have I got my conditioning correctly? Have I had proper diet? Have I had a good night's sleep? There's that kind of thing. And if the answer to that is all yes, which you would hope it would be, because you won't cross that line otherwise, then you perform, your confidence is good, and if confidence is good, then you perform better. And if you perform better, success. So performance is related to success. It doesn't guarantee success. There are other things, in sport you get things called referees who have an opinion. They might have a different opinion to you, but at least you've gone out, you've performed to the best of your ability, and the reward for that would be success. And if you've got that success, then you enjoy it. And once you enjoy it, you go around the circle again. So you enjoy doing what you're doing, be it sport or career or whatever, and then you come back for more. When you come back for more, you practice and train better. Then you're prepared better, your confidence comes back, you perform better, and then success again. And then you enjoy it, and then you go around again. So it's a self-fulfilling set of routines, really, that enable you to improve on your performance and you basically join that. If you don't enjoy it, then two things happen. One or two things to fix that. Firstly, if you don't enjoy it, don't do it. That's the first thing. Secondly, if you don't enjoy it, and this probably appears more to careers and things like that, is you need to find an angle in your work that you can enjoy it. Now, from a career point of view, how many people use PowerPoint? Let me use this as an example, because this is something that I did many years ago. I was down at London Bridge on a course about PowerPoint, how to use PowerPoint. It was a week-long course, believe it or not, on how to use PowerPoint. This was quite a few years ago. Microsoft PowerPoint is it's basically producing slides so you can actually talk to people and bore them to death, really. It's an aid to boredom. PowerPoint. So I went on this course for a full week, and it covered everything about, how should you stand, what clothes you should wear, what intonation you should use in your voices, what you should have on the slides, what you should do this, da-di-da, and it went on and on and on. And there were so many things to learn by the Friday afternoon. And I just basically stood up and said, well, I think I've learned how not to do things this week. So it's been quite a useful week in that respect. And basically, I just took the whole thing away. And the next presentation, PowerPoint presentation I did was basically an hour of stand-up comedy. I think it was there. But again, if you've got that bit of humour and that little bit of spark and things like that in how you're talking, how you're presenting stuff, people enjoy it. And if the audience is enjoying what you do, then they'll listen better. And if they listen better, they'll come back for more. And if they come back for more, what you're saying and what you're doing, you get more of that information into their heads. And if you do that, then they're prepared for what it is they're going to do. And if they're prepared for what it is they're going to do, they've got the confidence. And if they've got the confidence, they can then perform that. And do you see what I mean? It sort of fits into that sort of walk of life that you've got. So the circle of performance really does apply to I can't think of many walks of life that it doesn't apply to, really.
Exactly.
So if you start off from the key point of enjoying it, and if you don't enjoy it, like I did in the career as well, find an angle in that you can enjoy it. And the angle in I said was, I'm going to rip up that PowerPoint manual and I'm going to do it this way because this is what I'd like to hear. This is, if I'm sat in the audience, I don't want somebody who's reading at me and pointing randomly at very cluttered slides and lots of colours and things. I want to get involved. I want participation. I want people to enjoy doing it. And that's what I do to this day, really. I pepper the thing with a few gags and jokes, just really things so people can enjoy it and keep the things interactive. And that's the way I do it. It doesn't work for everybody, but people will do it different ways. They'll have different ways of doing that. They might tell interesting stories or little anecdotes and things that pass the time and keep people interested. So that the whole point of a PowerPoint slide is to disseminate information and give people information and calls to action. And if you're boring people to death after 5 minutes, you're definitely not going to do that.
Exactly. That reminds me of a situation when I first did. I've been doing public speaking and presenting and talking to audiences since 1992. My first gig was at the Connaught Rooms in London, which is a very prestigious place to speak. And I didn't know that at the time, but I knew it was going to be a big event. And I thought I was just one of the speakers. Well, it turns out I was the keynote speaker. And it was my first event, but because nobody knew that, of course, except me. And I did take tuition behind the scenes, and I had a mentor that was helping me because I was nervous, and I did a bit of practicing. So I go to the toilet, this last minute, as you should do, bent down to pull my tights up, and my glasses fell off and broke. So I thought, oh dear bother, as you can imagine. And so I went out, and it was in the days it was pre-PowerPoint, no such thing as PowerPoint in those days, because the overhead acetates were used. And I didn't know about presenters are supposed to carry this case around with his spare parts and pens and this, that, and the other. So and I had to prepare a written spiel on what I was going to be saying. Well, I did, although I found it quite difficult because I can't keep on script. So about the fourth acetate in, the darn machine broke and there was no lamp. Even the hotel didn't have a spare lamp. So I just put notes away and I just literally spoke from the heart on my topic. I was talking about credit management at the time. And I ended up, the glasses wasn't a problem because it meant I could only see the first few rows of the audience. So that was good. There was about 200 people there. And then the acetate breaking, the power machine breaking wasn't a problem because it enabled me to speak from the heart, and I ended up getting a standing ovation in my first gigs. And I've never prepared anything to this day, and it's about being authentic, isn't it? So when you're coaching,
that's true. Yeah. I mean, we were taught use prompt cards and things like that. I don't use them at all now. And the slides I put up are still a bit cluttery, and they could do with tidying up a little bit. But it's to do with the nature of the business I'm in IT. So they're very, very technical, very, very low level technical slides. But yeah, it's a case of knowing your audience, which again is part of the that's part of the knowledge build that you need to build up your confidence. If you know who you're speaking to, that's I think I'm talking about what is talent a little bit later on, but that's one of the talents that you have, and it's just working to your audience. But doing things like that, it's amazing how circumstances dictate how you do things up to a vast degree these days. And breaking your glasses and the OHP breaking down, the bulb going in the OHP, you couldn't think of any worse disasters, especially if that's your first appearance and the first appearance as a keynote speaker. But on the other hand, if you're prepared for it, then which you clearly had, and you then spoke from the heart out of necessity, and you got that ability to do that, then that's fantastic. That's even better than what you'd have actually would have ended up preparing had nothing gone wrong.
No, exactly. And it's given me a story as well to inspire other people, because when people say to me, oh, I couldn't speak in front of an audience and I couldn't do this and I couldn't do that, the inspirational part of it gets other people going, well, thinking, well, if she can do it, I can do it, so and the radio, we both have the radio shows, and when I first came on the radio, you're an old timer, you've been doing it for many years. I'm still a novice and I'm still learning. But when I first started, I was told by somebody who we both know, you must prepare everything. You need 15 songs per hour. So I'd worked out, I was doing the 2-hour show. I needed 30 songs. So on the Sunday prior to my first show, I was working at all these, downloading these songs and getting ready and getting the spiel in between the songs and everything. I thought, oh God, this is hard work. I'm not sure if I should have put my hand on it. I got persuaded to do it. And then I realised that actually my show isn't a music show, it's a talk show. So I don't need all that many songs.
No, you're right. I mean, I started off, I was scared stiff and I had a script. I used to write a script every week down to the word. And eventually people said, why you sound like you're reading it from a script? And well, I am actually. so, well, no, don't do that. So I might just make a few pencil notes these days when I go in, but again, it's down to the experience of what you're doing and the fact that I ain't got a producer. So,
yes.
And I'm sure you haven't got a producer either.
I don't have no. Nobody dare produce me. No, I think that would be a bad idea.
Yeah.
And it's what you say, Martin, about enjoyment. I say that I've never done a day's work in my life because I've always enjoyed what I do. And every now and then there are surveys that Gallup and Chambers of Commerce and so on do, and nearly every time it comes out around the same 70 to 75% of people in work don't like their job, and therefore they're not going to be productive and efficient, like you were saying, this circle of performance. Yeah,
that's true. As you say, if you find a job that you like doing, you never do a day's work in your life. That's absolutely true, and that applies. It doesn't matter what that job is. Whether you're chairman of BP or whether you're sweeping the roads in a city centre. If you enjoy doing that, and I know of people, and I say sweeping the roads because I know of people who've done that and who thought it's been the best thing they can do. They love it, and that's great. Because when it comes to money, we're all 30 bob short on a Friday afternoon, aren't we? We're all struggling to buy that last round. It doesn't matter how much you earn. So please don't take a job just purely on money basis. You've got to enjoy the job, what you're doing, and if you do that, you're at work 8 hours a day or more. You're just going to enjoy doing that. That's the first thing.
Absolutely. Let's hear your first song, which probably takes no introduction, but I'm going to ask you for one. It's Harry Chapin, Circles. Why did you choose this one, Martin?
Circle of performance, really. I think Harry Chapin's a wonderful songwriter. Writes lots of songs from the heart and anecdotal stuff. And this is, I think I've got this on my funeral list. I think really, but you listen to the lyrics to understand why.
Brilliant. Here it comes. So no introduction needed, but very obvious there to do with this circle of performance. Martin, when you're coaching, I'm sure you'd have some. You're saying grassroots is where you specialise mostly with your coaching days, but talent, not talent. I mean, what do you do with when you have kids who don't appear to be talented, and how do you spot talent? Where's the line here?
Well, talent to me, talent is many things. If you think about it, there's if you think about the world of, say, cycling, you've got to be fast, you've got to be strong, you've got to have recovery, you've got to be fit. But it goes beyond that, because if you're just fit and you're strong and you've got good balance and you can ride a bike fast, that's all well and good. But there's other stuff that goes around that, stuff that might not seem as obvious. So, I mean, if I said to you that being able to sleep well at night is a talent, eating the right food is a talent, being able to process that food is a talent, the discipline of getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever it is that you need to get up and getting out of bed and being prepared is a talent. So suddenly you get into these things, a lot of these things are fairly mundane. So if you say what is talent, you can list, and I stop at 30 when I'm doing my coach to coach sessions, is that we go through a list of attributes that contribute towards creating the athlete themselves. And as I say, some of these are quite, take for instance, sleeping. The British cycling team, the last and previous Olympics, they used to take their own pillow with them to the hotels, so they'd sleep on their own pillows, so they've a better chance of getting a good night's sleep. And we've all had those occasions when we've woke up, we feel as though we've been dragged through a hedge backwards all night, and you don't feel like doing anything the following day if you've had a bad night's sleep. So having a good night's sleep is indeed in itself a talent. Now you can list all these things out. You can list things out like, okay, your DNA might be part of it, but you can compensate for that. Your fitness levels, you can compensate for that. You can do something about that. Not sleeping very well, you can do something about that. Eating the wrong diet, you can do something about that. So you've got all this list of things, and then gradually you'll be able to go down every single one of them, apart from two, which I'll come to in a little bit. And you can say, well, I can actually improve that. I can actually work on sleeping. I can do relaxation exercises before I go to bed. I can do self-talk when I'm in bed to make myself go to sleep. And there are certain things that you can, even going to bed with an empty bladder, for instance, is a talent, because you're less inclined then to wake up during the night and have to go to the toilet, and that breaks your night's sleep. Now, if you go through this list of talents that we put down, there's only two that you can't do anything about, and that is your age and your height. So no matter how hard you try, you can't adjust your age. In actual fact, your height, some bright spark decided to interrupt me when I was doing one presentation and said, actually, I know a basket player that's had his legs extended through surgery. So it's okay then, all right. It's just, but you can't, the vast majority of things are to do with talent. Now, on the other aspect of things, let's pretend that I'm a football manager and I'm talking to my chairman, and I want to sign David Beckham in his prime. So I'm trying to get the chairman to spend £20 million to buy this England captain, world-class player, to put him in the side. but the chairman's never seen him play. So the chairman will ask the questions. What's he like at throw-ins? Is he any good at throw-ins? Well, he's okay. He's not so bad. He's okay. What about heading the ball? Well, he's as good as anybody else, really. He's not brilliant, but he's okay. What about kicking with his left foot? Is he any good at that? Well, no, he's not very good on his left foot at all, really. So the chairman then says, well, wait a minute. You want me to spend £20 million on somebody who's not very good at throw-ins, not very good heading the ball, and he's rubbish on his left foot? What? We've just described David Beckham. So you can pull out those things, and not only do you not have to be good at everything on that, you can improve everything if you want to, and that's the I think it was Roger Bannister who said fitness is both finite and absolute, and infinite, sorry. So you can be fit to do a certain job like run a 4-minute mile, but you can be even fitter still to run faster than 4-minute mile. So there's that. There's the, you know, like I said, the finite side and the infinite side of things. So if you are working with an athlete or working with someone at work or various other things, you can go through the work, the progress at the work, and you can guarantee that most of the stuff you can improve it, but maybe you don't need to improve it. Maybe there are other things to concentrate on as to how you're doing it. It could be that if that person at work who's insubordinate and not performing well, it might be that the sole problem is that they're not sleeping well at night. And it's a completely different issue to solve somebody who's sleeping well at night to somebody who's not performing at work. So that's the management and the coaching side, how that comes into it. It's actually stripping away what constitutes that person that you're coaching, and looking and working down each particular facet, each particular aspect of talent that you've got, and seeing if you can improve it and where you can improve it. Apart from your age and your height, of course.
What about goal setting? Do you find that people say, "Oh, my aim is to do my personal best of X and Y, whatever it is"? Do you find that some people are over, sort of unrealistic about goal setting? How do you support people in that aspect?
Yeah, I mean, goal setting is not to be confused with expectation. Goal setting is when you're working with an athlete, you decide, okay, this time next year they want to be world champion or whatever it happens to be. Something that's realistic, something that's achievable. I mean, clearly nobody was ever written about, like yourself, Elaine, it'd be pointless me saying to you, I can make you world champion this time next week, because that would be unrealistic, just as it'd be unrealistic for me to be world champion ever again. So, not that I've ever been a world champion, but so your goal setting has to be realistic. But also, on the other hand, people set expectations, and this is great for David and Goliath situations, for expectations. So if I set an expectation that I expect my team to go out this weekend and win handsomely because we're playing a team that's from 3 or 4 leagues below us, what sometimes happens, I mean, sometimes that does happen, that they'll win 4 or 5-0 or whatever. But giant killing, for instance, as they call it in football parlance, in sporting parlance, is the better team will go out and expect to win. And what happens is after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, the score's still 0-0. So 2 things happen. One is that the team, if it's by half time and it's still 0-0, the team that should be winning, who expects to win, start questioning what they're doing and saying, well, we should be 2-3-0 up by now, but we're not. And eventually the laws of physics collapse around them, because they start thinking, well, we're not doing anything. How can we possibly not be winning here? And there's a disorientation in that aspect. And the second thing that happens is the team that should be losing handsomely start thinking, wait a minute, it's still 0-0 here. We're still, we can go out in the second half and we can really give it a go. So, and quite often what happens is the team that should be winning ends up losing through a giant killing aspect, and they have no idea why they've lost. They haven't any idea, because of this setting the expectation. I think the only thing, rather than setting expectation, is the preparation to perform well. If you prepare to perform well, which we covered earlier, then you can do that. Now that doesn't interfere with setting a goal to success, because if you want to win the FA Cup and you're Blackwell United or whatever, you want to win the FA Cup, then that's your goal. It's probably unrealistic, to be fair, but nevertheless that might be your goal. It's probably unachievable, but nevertheless that's the goal. But then you'd go out, if they expect to win every game, clearly that's not going to happen. So if you define your goal and be clear, concise and realistic, that's the key thing. And a lot of the time, if you write these things down, if you write it down, it happens. So, and then you're asking yourself the question, what do I need to do in order to achieve whatever it is that my goal is? Quite often you end up with belief systems. There's something in your head called the reticular activity system. It's a little part of the brain at the top of the spine, base of the skull. It's only a small piece of the brain, but that filters out a lot of the stuff. It acts as a gatekeeper. So, for instance, if you're in a crowded room and somebody shouts "Elaine," you can hear that, but you can't hear everybody else talking around it. It's just, you're programmed to hear that, and this is what you're trying to train in terms of your belief system. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to do away with those beliefs that you quite often you're taught as a kid. What is it? Something like 16,000 times by the time you're 5, you're taught no, 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 don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And on a few dozen occasions, literally, you're taught yes, do that, yes, do that, do that, do the other. So that relates back onto it's much easier to do stuff than it is not to do stuff. So you're training the reticular activity system, activating system to actually to actually allow you to do that. So it's much better to be positive about something than be negative about nothing. If you see what I mean?
Yes,
it's a lot easier to do that.
Yeah.
So it also helps to. I mean, we haven't got time to go into defining benefit beliefs and defining systems and overcoming barriers, which that's essentially what the job of a coach is. But if you set realistic beliefs, realistic targets, and you understand what the limits are to your belief system, you can then start training your reticular activity system, something called neuro-linguistic programming, which I'm sure you've had plenty of people speaking about that who are probably far better at it than I am. But you use that it's kind of a logical, rational analysis to get what's called a well-formed outcome, which actually overcomes those barriers to that. So when you tie that back in with the talent and the circle of performance and various other things, you can see in a nutshell. I mean, bear in mind it took 800 hours for me to get to this level. I'm trying to do it in 45 minutes. Suddenly it opens up a new approach to things, and I say it does not just apply to sport, but it also applies to any walk of life. Anything you want to do, if you want to apply it to your career, that's great. Or even looking after the grandkids or something like that. That's you can do that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Martin. It's been a real pleasure having a chat with you. And your station, your program on Elastic FM. Let's tell listeners about that.
Yes, I'm the hairy one on Sunday evening. So it's the Sunday night rockery. So a rockery is a heaped arrangement of rock. So I thought that sounds a pretty apt description of the program. So I'm on 9 till 11 on Elastic FM, and the first hour is sort of fairly loud, sort of heavy metal stuff, but then the second hour is more adult-oriented rock and more soft rock, folk rock, that kind of thing. So generally speaking, hopefully you go to bed in a good frame of mind, not bouncing off the ceiling. So 9 till 11 Sunday nights, Elastic FM, Sunday night rockery. Thank you.
Brilliant, marvellous. We'll all be listening to that, and we're going to be playing out on your second song, "The Lads in Their Hundreds" by George Butterworth. I've not heard of that. Well, I don't think I have. It doesn't ring any bells. What is that about, Martin?
It's actually written before the First World War. It was written. It's a poem by A.E. Houseman called it's a circle of poems, cycle of poems called "The Shropshire Lad," and the poems were set to music by George Butterworth, who was. It was a lot of the musicians at the time, the Romantic period, English Romantic period. They were they were going around collecting folk music and things like that. There was a huge influx in traditional music and putting it to with a classical background and stuff. And the Lads in the Hundreds was used on the 100th anniversary of the Battle of the Somme in 2016. And it's particularly poignant because George Butterworth, the author, or the composer, should I say, was killed at the Battle of the Somme. And I found out later in life that my great-granddad, was also killed on the first day of the Battle of the Somme in 1916, 1st of July 1916. So this particular song, it's about all the girls and boys going to the fair and having a bit of a laugh and a joke and getting a few beers down and so on, and then looking round and seeing that some of them ain't going to come back. But it was written before the First World War. It's probably referring to the Crimean War or something like that. But it's absolutely poignant for the First World War and for the 100th anniversary of the Battle of the Somme. And as I say, because Great Grandad was killed at the Battle of the Somme. So it's a song. It's Mark Stone, baritone, Stephen Barlow on piano, and it's called The Lads in Their Hundreds.
Marvellous. Thank you, Martin Gamble. And don't forget, listeners, to tune in to Sunday Night Rockery 9 till 11 on Elastic FM, and this show will be repeated on Saturday 11 till 12, and I'll be online next Tuesday with another wonderful guest. So whatever you're doing, have a fantastic week, keep safe, keep healthy, and here is The Lads in Their Hundreds by George Butterworth. Thank you, Martin Gamble.
Thank you, Elaine. Enjoyed it. Thank you. Been brilliant.